Hello everyone, Wanda Steiner here for installment number 5 this week. And this week we're going to make 4 patch units. So this one I'm going to show you is a 4.5 inch unfinished unit that would go into your quilt blocks. So we're going to also look at this 2 different ways. So first of all, when you read a pattern, they will often ask you to cut the squares for that unit in independent squares like this. What we want to make are 2 of these, one in one direction and one in the other direction. So we need 4 of these 2.5 inch squares, and you need to cut them very accurately, and then you're going to sew them together. So what I like to do is I like to put the dark one on the bottom and the light one on the top, because if it starts to move at all, I can see a little bit of that dark fabric peeking out, and I can stop and readjust what I'm doing, because these 2 units should overlap each other precisely because they are 2.5 inches, both of them. So then I would make a pile of these, take them over to my sewing machine, and then I'd start chain piecing them through. So I have started with, just to show you, I have started with a dark one. So I would start by holding my threads very tightly, and then I'll start stitching, and then chain piecing is just not cutting your thread, but continuing on, sewing onto nothing, going on to the next piece, sewing onto nothing, going on to the next piece. And you just continue like that for as many units as you'd like, or until you get tired of it and you want to stop and start pressing them and doing something else. So then you take them out of the sewing machine, you cut them here, and then you would cut them apart. Make sure that you cut this off, because you don't want that, because it's just messy. And then you take that little stack and you take them over to the iron. Then you would press it to the dark. So typically you press to the dark, and in this situation we are. And sometimes circumstances will dictate pressing in the other direction, but for this illustration we're pressing to the dark. So then I end up with this. So then I need to square that to 2.5 by 4.5 inches. So it needs to be precise before I sew it onto something else. So what I'm looking for here is the 2.25 inch line that goes across, because neither side is going to be very accurate, but I want to make sure that I have it in the middle enough that I have enough to take off a skiff here and a little skiff on the other side. So I position it in the center, so I can do that. Anchor my hand. I have my Omnigrid up. I have my 1 and my 1. That's another thing, is whenever you are going to orient your ruler, you can always take, and if you're right-handed, you take your right hand and you have your 1 and your 1, and you scoot it up to the top of wherever you are, and that's a good start for an orientation as well. Okay, 2.25, and enough on this side to take a thread or 2 off, and enough on the other side. Let's just make sure. The camera getting in my way here a little bit. Okay, I'm a little off there. So anchoring my hand up and around the corner, and then I'm going to turn it around. And now I know that this on the left hand side is a nice straight cut, and along the bottom is accurate as well. So I have 3 spots to look as I orient this time. I have my 2.25 in the seam, and I have my 2.5 along the left hand side here, and I have my 4.5 along the bottom. I want to make sure that they are on those lines. These lines are on the fabric, or I'll be a thread too narrow and a thread too short. Again, anchored up and around the corner, and I can just hear that I'm making a good cut and that there's going to be a little bit there. So again, the magic is in the dust. So then I have an accurate 2.5 by 4.5 inch unit that I can sew onto another one. So I take the other one, and I'm going to put it the opposite way, because now they're pressed to the dark, so the seams are going to butt up beautifully as well. So when I look in here, I can see that I'm lining it up very nicely and that they're nestling together beautifully. And then I'm going to pin. So I would pin on each side of the seam and I wouldn't pin right in the middle of that seam because it will distort it. And make sure that your pins are going into your fabric straight. And then I'm going to make sure that this is very flush here on the end, because both of these pieces are measuring 2.5 by 4.5. And I would typically always pin flat onto the cutting mat, but I just wanted you to see that. Okay, so there we are. And now I'm going to take that over to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew that together. I would have a whole pile of those that I would sew. So now I have this and I've set my seam. So the stitches are relaxed. So now what I want to do is I want to open it up and I want to see how successful I was, because this is always exciting, even though it's 27 years later. It's always exciting to open it up, and it is an exact intersection. Woohoo! So then I want to reduce any bulk that there may be on this. These fabrics have quite a soft hand, so they don't have a lot of coarse bulk to them. And I could just press this over. However, and it would be okay in here. But if these were coarser or grainier fabrics, then that just wouldn't work. It would be too much bulk in here and here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn it over, and I'm just going to go like that, and create a cute little four-patch in the middle there. Now, oftentimes there'll be a stitch that just wants to hang in. So you just get rid of that one stitch, but don't be too crazy about trying to get too many stitches out of there, because it's going to, you don't want the center to unravel. So there, I have a nice little four-patch. And I could press it from this side if I want to, but there is a danger of putting some pleats in there. So I would take it back to my iron and I would just press straight flat down, give it a little spoof of best press and press it down again. No grinding, waving, none of that, because it needs to be straight. You can go from corner to corner if you like, but being in the middle like that is the important part. So then you get this. So now I have this all nice and flat. Look at that little four patch in there. Seams going that way. They're all going, then they're circling around. So then what I need to do is I need to square it down. So I will take my, got a little cut there on my finger. I will take my ruler, and what I want is I want to have 2 1/4 in here and 2 1/4 across the horizontal, the vertical and the horizontal. So the X marks the spot, so to speak. So what I need here is to have that lining up beautifully, and then I will have enough opportunity to take a little bit off here and a little bit off the top, and then I'm going to turn it around. And now I'm going to focus on the center. So I have this going on the vertical, this going on the horizontal. I know that this is a nice clean cut, and down at the bottom. So making sure that my line is up on my fabric in all areas. I can go up and around the corner, and there I have a nice accurate four patch unit, 4.5 inches by 4.5 inches. So if I didn't want to do it by sewing these independent squares together, I can just go back to my strip piecing that I did last time. Remember we did that with the 2-bar units? And this is a little bit more efficient. Some people like to do this way. And you can just take your strip piecing, take your ruler, put it on the 2.5 inch line here, 2 1/4 inch line here. Line that up. Up. Around the corner. There you go. And then turn that around. Make our final cut, which is going to be 2 1/2 on this side and the 2 1/4 on the seam down the horizontal. That little cut that you see on my finger didn't come from my rotary cutter, just so you know. Anyway, so up and around the corner, and there we have an accurate 2 1/2 by 4.5 inch piece that we can go ahead and we just continue on making as many as we need to, and then we can sew those together. And that is a 4-patch unit. So what you could put that into would be a block like this, and you put them in the corners, and it makes a really nice block, and then the friendship star is in the middle, is in the center part here. So these are half square triangles. Next installment number 6, we're going to learn how to make those half square triangles, and we already know how to cut a center square with accuracy. So then we would be able to make our 4 patch corners, and we'll have the half square triangles in the center block, and we will be able to make a 9 patch block with those units. So I look forward to sharing with you how to make that half square triangle with accuracy next time. And thank you for listening to me. Have a great day. Bye.